My name is Magnus Walker. All my life I have loved cars. I love the way they drive, the way they look, and I love the stories they create. I'm not drawn to flashy new metal. I'm always looking for the classics that excite me, that inspire me, and that someone can afford to own without having to rob a bank. The underdogs. These cars may not be the posters on your wall, but they could be the next big thing. One of the greatest things about the 1970s was the design house of Bertone. They designed the iconic landmark cars such as the Lamborghini Miura, the Lamborghini Countach, the Lancia Stradas, and the famous underdog, unloved cars, the Lamborghini Espada and the Ferrari 308 GT4 Dino.
It's a 75 Series 1 308 GT4. It's my first toe dip into vintage cars.
Now why this? Why not a 308 GTB, Magnum PI? Why a 308 GT4?
Because nobody has these.
See, that's what I like about it too. The one model only, Bertone, non-Pininfarina. This was the ugly duckling. You won't get invited to the Ferrari Concours. The Tifosi are not digging it. That was all 20 years ago. Tell me why you, other than no one wanted it.
Well, it is still polarizing, the design, but the long flat planes, the angles, I'm a kid of the 70s, and that just, it brought it all back to me for some reason. If you look at the dash, it's divided into three parts. There's no real flow, there's no real swoop to it. It's very angular and jarring, and it just felt so 70s. This and the old Lotus Esprit, you know, James Bond.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was.
Now you were saying earlier on that, you know, it's kind of a workout to steer it, but once it's moving, it's not bad. I guess these are relatively skinny wheels and tires though. You know, they don't seem that wide. The steering feels pretty light. I do love the spindly Momo steering wheel. I'm a big fan of Momo steering wheels, so I like that about it. The visibility is really pretty nice.
Visibility except for the no right-hand mirror.
I'm used to that. Most of my cars don't have a right-hand mirror. You know, it's more about what's ahead of us, I guess.
Exactly. What's that? Raul, Julia, and Gumball Rally?
Yeah, we're in a Ferrari. Come on. Who cares who's behind us? I do like the way it shifts.
The shift is pretty crisp. I like that, yeah.
So you haven't done anything mechanically to the car other than some basic stuff?
Other than upkeep, there's no upgrades.
Okay. So this is as close as we can get to going back 45 years in time to experience what this would have been like in 1975.
Yeah, I hope so.
So this is the car that replaced the iconic Dino and was not quite as loved.
No, not loved at all.
I don't quite know the reason behind Ferrari switching from Pininfarina to Bertone. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
There's let's call it Ferrari Lore.
Yeah.
Some say there was a falling out at the time. Some say that Pininfarina didn't have the resources.
So here's what I know about Pininfarina. It was formed by Battista Pininfarina, the guy that they call the Picasso of the car world. He founded the company on May 22nd back in 1930. By my math, that makes the company 90 years old. They started out designing with Alfa Romeo and they partnered up with Ferrari in 1951. It's best to say though, the only road-going Ferrari not designed by Pininfarina up to 2016 was the 308 GT4 Dino. This really seems to be coming into its own right now. You know, it does stand out. You don't see them on the street.
Well, one of my best friends calls this my ugly car.
Oh, your ugly car.
I'm like, well, yeah, clearly he just doesn't get it, which is fine.
Right.
But, you know, look at it as not just design-wise, but this was the first V8 production car for Ferrari. So it has a historical significance outside of the whole design conversation.
Right. Because I guess back then Ferraris had to be 12 cylinders, right?
Well, if it wasn't 12 cylinder, it wasn't a Ferrari, Enzo said.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben, this is your first vintage car. You took what some may think is a deep dive with a 45-year-old
I think it's
Ferrari.
a deep dive.
You bought it because you love the style, the design. Does value have any impact to you on the car? The way you think about it, the way you drive it? If it becomes the next big thing and goes up in value or doesn't, does that affect how you feel about the car?
Well, sure. You know, I would love for the value to go up, but at this point, what I'm into it for will never, I don't think that retail value will ever achieve that. So if it goes up, great. If it doesn't, you know, I accepted this as a long-term ownership situation a while ago, you know.
That's the best way. You know, personally, I've never bought a car thinking it's going to go up in value or hoping it's going to go up in value. To me, these are what I call memorable moments, smiles per mile. These are things that you can't, or I can't, put a dollar amount on. Some people can, but I don't look at it that way. It's the pleasure that I get from the car is what I'm into it for.
Yeah, it's not like a house that you can flip.
Yeah, I've never bought a car thinking I was going to make money on it. But interestingly, especially when it came to 911s and Porsches, I always bought what I loved, and then what I loved became a little bit more desirable later. Prices went up. But for me, it was never about an investment, other than investing in the project, the journey, and what ultimately became what I call memorable moments. So I'm super pumped that you're letting me drive it. I'm super excited now because I probably want one even more. When people think of Lamborghini, obviously they think of the Countach. You know, if you grew up in the 70s or 80s, chances are you had a Countach poster on the wall. But the younger generation, these kids are probably going to be thinking about the Hurricane, the Aventador, or whatever the latest, greatest Lamborghini is. But to me, there's nothing more iconic than the wedgy shape of the Lamborghini Espada. So Ben and I are going to go drive over to meet a guy called Aaron. Apparently he's a journalist and he's on his third one. This looks spectacular. It makes the E-Type look tiny, and I thought the E-Type was pretty long.
It's big and heavy. It's a giant four-seater for cruising the motorways at high speed with three of your buds.
How does it drive?
At speed, it's fabulous. I mean, on a motorway, autostrada, expressway, it's right around 70, 80 miles an hour. Everything gets super creamy. And
creamy and dreamy.
Engine's running about 4,000 RPM, and it makes 80 miles an hour feel like 120.
So how does it drive in LA stop-go traffic when you're not cruising at that speed?
It's a little bit more caged at that point.
Caged in the sense of what? A caged tiger waiting to get out with, you know, the motor, you know, just ready to be unleashed? Is that what you mean by
exactly.
caged?
I mean, it's a 500 RPM Redline V12, which for 1970 was pretty high.
Yeah.
And all the torque and all the power is up high. It's really best to think of it as a V12 motorcycle engine. So it wants to be at revs in order to make all the power. So, and it's of course sounds the best.
Yeah, I get it. How many of these have you owned?
Well, this is number 3, including a parts car. So the Japanese have a saying, the only thing dumber than climbing Mount Fuji is doing it twice, and I guess I've done it 3 times.
So you're a sucker for punishment.
And I'm looking at another one right now, so...
It looks like my type of car too, because it appears to be what I would assume is original, and it's got a couple of chips and dings and cracks. And tell me about the originality of the car, because I like it.
This is original paint and original interior. The color was called Verde Pulido, pale green, and it's got a blue interior. It's a very Italian color combination. I actually got a hold of the son of the original owner. The original owner was still alive, and his son spoke to me, and I said, I got a million questions starting with why this color combination. And he said, well, it was popular at the time. He had a Ferrari 330 that he traded in for this car, and he owned it for 5 years. And it is, even in the Lamborghini pantheon, which Lamborghini was famous for painting a car any color you wanted, this is an unusual combination. Not very many cars were built this way.
It is a great color combo. So let me ask you this. What is the most memorable moment you've had in this car?
Most memorable moment would have to be Pebble Beach. It was right after I bought the car. I realized that the engine had to be taken out, and I stuck in the engine from my parts car, which had been running fine when the car was crashed, and I drove it to Pebble Beach to the Concorso Italiano, and at the show, by the time I got to the show, I realized that all the carburetors were crap, and I had a perfectly good set of carburetors at home in LA,
place for them. Yeah.
sitting on a shelf. So I called my friend who was coming up that day, and I said, run into my garage, grab my carburetors, and bring them. And at the show, at the Concorso Italiano, we pulled all 6 carburetors off and put the 6 carburetors that he brought on and tuned it right there as a car. We had quite a crowd. We made the USA Today. It was
This must have made you the star of the show. I thought your memorable moment was going to involve, like, you know, some dancers, strippers, cocaine, guns, but no, this seems like a way more memorable moment being the star of the show.
I'm not cool enough for all that stuff. No, the most memorable moment with Lamborghini is probably wrenching on it.
I think what we have to do now, though, is see how it drives in LA traffic and see if we can get it to that sweet spot of 7,500 RPM on a twisty road, see how the big bull handles. There's really no better place than LA to drive these cars. For me though, as a former 308 GTB owner, I know how that car drives, but I've never driven a Lamborghini Espada. So I'm pretty excited to see how that drives. So, I just drove the 308 GT4. This is sort of a similar era, slightly earlier, but a completely different feel straight away. You know, for me, the visibility is really pretty good, I gotta say. You know, got that sunlight piercing through right there. But everything feels heavier and slower. And for me, my body position, this seems to be like the classic Italian short leg, long arm, because I'm having to splay my knees apart so the wheel doesn't bang them, which is a completely different experience. Like the Ferrari I got in, it felt familiar straight away. You know, I'd owned a 308 before, I'd driven some 308 GT4s. This, though, is like a whole different kettle of fish. How did it feel when you were following us in the Ferrari?
Oh yeah, it's a little slower to accelerate than the Ferrari, but once you kind of turn in and let the car take a set, it really holds quite well. And again, you know, these guys kind of knew what they were doing from a chassis standpoint.
Yeah, well, I'm going to find out. I haven't got out of second gear yet. I do have to say there's a whole lot of style in here. I love the way everything's worn and cracked up. You know, you can still see the leather dye coming through. It feels good in here.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was kind of an executive jet for the road. And,
yeah, I get it. I can see where they're going. It oozes character. And I'm just trying to feel the brakes. But it is pretty spacious, and once moving, it's lighter than it appears at first glance. Yeah,
that's the thing about this car. When you get it going fast, it kind of shrinks around you a bit. The chassis really does come alive.
The Lamborghini Espada influenced the Lotus Eclat, the Renault Scimitar, the Mustang Mach-1, the Ford Torino. I mean, from a styling point of view, it's got bags of style and character for sure.
Well, and it was so complicated for its day. I mean, you know, Lamborghini didn't even start up his first engine until '63 and built his first car in '64.
The manual box is real nice to shift.
It's not bad. It's a kind of a 1 and a 2 and a 2 and a 3.
There's no speed shifting.
Yeah, no, there's no speed shifting.
But it is pretty precise.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard for me to beat the clickety-click of the 3.8 that I just got out of, but
yeah, and then that's I think a cable shifter. I think that is a cable shifter. This is directly down into the box, but it's a slow box. It was Lamborghini's own box with ZF internals, and they were very proud of the fact that they made their own gearbox.
I have made it into 5th gear. So.
There you go.
Well, I will say, having looked at you in my rearview mirror in the Ferrari, the Lamborghini gets more attention. For sure, you are getting some thumbs up. You know, you're getting a lot of props. That obviously must happen all the time.
The thing about that Ferrari is it reads as a mid-engine, a modern kind of mid-engine shape. You know, it's a sort of mid-engine doorstop. This car does not look like anything else because there's no...
Other than the Mustang and the Lotus Clan and the Reliant Seminole, which all came after it.
Well, and also not cars you commonly see in Los Angeles.
No, true.
But it's so wide and low and long that its proportions, even to a person who doesn't know cars, they immediately are attracted because it just looks so weird.
It's like the Cadillac of Lamborghinis.
Exactly. So it's it's a bit of an eyeball magnet. Love it or hate it.
Yeah, for sure. It makes a statement. For me, I'd love to own both the 308 GT4 Dino and the Lamborghini Espada. They both conjure up emotions of stepping back in time. By modern standards, you know, these cars are nothing about performance, but to me, they're engaging, intoxicating, and rewarding. And that's what makes them an enjoy to drive, and I'm sure an enjoyment to own. Having owned a Ferrari 308 GTB before, I gotta say I would probably take the Lamborghini Espada if I was given a choice. To me, it's nostalgic, it's quirky, you don't see them on the road, and it's a joy to drive.